Hey guys, so I'm not sure if anybody's enjoying the weird and wacky stories about my paramedic escapades and um, weird life experiences that I've had, but I'm hoping that in the relaying of some of these things that I've been through and experienced in my life, that it somehow just touches and resonates and encourages, because that's what I'm about. That's what my channel is meant to be about, to just be human and real and raw, as I often say, no editing, just straight off the cuff. This is me, raw and real. And none of the stories and episodes or incidents or experiences that I share are made up. Okay, everything that I do say and share is as genuine and as true as I can best recall and share with you guys. I've had a really interesting and weird life. Well, I think so, and many people have told me so, and that's why I decided to start sharing these things on the channel. So I'm hoping you guys will keep coming, because wow, this channel's still so teeny weeny. But anyway, okay, so as a paramedic, which was some years back now, very many years back, I used to work in the middle of Johannesburg, which is quite a hectic area, lots of action. It's always had a worldwide reputation for being one of the highest, accident and trauma centers in the world. I mean, we have gunshots and assaults and car accidents and you name it. I mean, it's hectic. It was an excellent training ground and experience, etc. But I saw and experienced some very hectic things. But the one day, and as I often did in those days, I would pray, before I would go to work and ask God to just be with me, help me, keep me safe because of the dangers that we face and being in the middle of the city where a lot of criminal activity goes on. So anyway, I go down to the south of Johannesburg with my partner for a patient who's had a heart attack. And he's at a private facility which he couldn't afford. And so we were needing to transfer him up to the government hospital. It wasn't a very long distance, but he'd had a heart attack. He was on a drip. He was being monitored, etc. And he needed to go to hospital to be admitted for ongoing care to recover from the heart attack. So we arrived at the hospital, nothing untoward. It was a fairly straightforward call for me. It wasn't too hectic. He was pretty stable. He was certainly alert and awake and conscious. And we went through the formalities, loaded him up into the ambulance, and off we went. Now, I used to sit at the back as the advanced paramedic. My partner was driving us. And we had the style of ambulance that we had was a closed box ambulance. We didn't have a through connection between the driver and the patient. So he couldn't hear, my partner couldn't hear anything. So it was very private and so I used to very often just engage in all kinds of discussions with my patients to help them, keep them calm and stuff. And just distract them from what's going on and pass the time. And as often I tried to bring the conversation around to the Lord. I can't remember how the conversation got to this point, but I do remember him saying to me he was afraid of dying. And that's understandable because cardiac patients who've had a heart attack often do have what we call that doom and gloom sense, that impending dread feel, like I'm dying or I could die. And so they're very aware of their life and the potential for them to now not be here real soon. So I remember him saying to me he was afraid of dying. And I said something to encourage him and to say, no, look, there is life after death and this and that. And he said to me, but how do you know? How can you be so sure? What are you saying with such conviction, if you like? And I said to him, well, some things in life are hard to explain. There's some things that you ask questions and there isn't always a readily available answer. I said, but if you're really sincere, and if you really want to know if there's a life after death or not, and if you really are wanting to find God and find out if he's real or not, because I said to him, God is very real to me. I've had a personal experience with receiving the Lord, receiving Jesus, walking with God, knowing God is real, and experiencing him in ways that convince me without a doubt that God is real. He's there. He's with me. But I said to him, if you're really sincere and you ask God, he will tell you. He will show you. Because there's certain things I just can't answer for you, but this is what I believe and this is what I feel. And so we carried on chatting along those lines, and the journey went uneventfully. It was probably a 20-minute drive, and we arrived at the receiving hospital. We had to take him up to the ward where he was going to be admitted into ICU. And because we were on an ICU ambulance, there's a lot of paperwork involved. So at the end of the call, I'd handed him over. We put him into his bed. We gave the nurses the handover, the history, etc. And I then sat down at the nurse's table inside the ICU to complete my paperwork, which was quite extensive because during the ride, I hadn't done paperwork. I was engaging with the patient, just charting his observations and things. But it took me a good 10 minutes to basically do the paperwork. In the meantime, the patient has ended up in, I think, bed number 6 because there were only a few beds all next to each other in an open ICU ward. And he's right up against the hand basin at the end of the ward. And my partner, who's sort of been washing his hands and lingering at the basin, I notice occasionally I sort of glance and I see my partner's chatting to this guy quite at length. So I'm thinking, wow, what on earth are they talking about? Because we've handed over, it's a formality, and you're done and you go. And eventually I wrap up my paperwork, I give it to the nurse and I'm done. And I go to the hand basin to wash my hands and to basically rescue my partner now from said patient. Because I'm thinking, wow, this patient's yapping his ear off. Maybe he just doesn't want to be rude and he can't get away from the guy. So I find myself looking at this man for the first time. And he's sitting in his... Oh, sorry. Oh my goodness, I've got the story all mixed up. So the guy at the end that my partner's talking to is not the patient we brought in, okay? It's another guy. The patient that we brought in is in bed number 2, a few beds back. We've handed him over and we've left him in his bed and my partner went to wash his hands. The guy right next to the basin has started chatting to him and they haven't stopped. And I'm thinking, ooh, my partner doesn't want to be rude. He can't get away from the guy. I better go rescue him. So as I get there to rescue him, I notice this man's got the most striking blue, shiny, glittery, sparkly eyes. It was mesmerizing. This guy's eyes were like incredible. But the rest of him was like, because he was this actually at the time, I'm middle-aged now. He must have been in his 60s, okay? So he was this older dude, clearly grey, wrinkly. He was covered in tattoos. He really looked like a biker, a gangster biker type, a real rough and tumble bad news dude. And I sort of, and I sort of just very gently get ready to do the necessary and grab my partner away. And whatever was going on, they were chatting and I just started listening. And this man started telling, I don't know if he was retelling the story for my benefit, but he started saying along the lines of, he was in the hospital right now because he'd had an aneurysm. Now, an aneurysm is when there's a leak in your blood vessel, okay? His aorta, the main one coming out of his heart, had developed a leak and then it had ruptured. And basically he'd bled all of his blood into his cavity. And he says, this is what he says. And again, it's a long time ago, so I'm sort of going on a vague memory here. And I'm going to paraphrase. And sorry I keep scratching, but I've got the fan on and my hair's in my face. And there's no editing, so too bad. Okay, so he starts saying to us basically, he'd been at home and he had led a really, not the best kind of life. He'd been a drinker and a biker and a gang, the typical biker gangster type. And he'd found the Lord. He'd basically found the Lord at some point in his life. And he was sitting at home with family on the couch, and he remembers distinctly saying that he felt the sensation of, as the aneurysm ruptured in his chest and he started to bleed inside his own chest, he felt the sensation and he just knew immediately he was dying. He just knew it. And he still said, whether out loud or in his mind, he still said, Lord, give me more time with my family. Please give me more time with my family. And then he says he just remembers suddenly he saw what looked like and what he described as angels, but just their arms, interestingly enough, like from their arms down. And they were wearing golden sleeves. They had golden sleeves on. And that's the part that he could see, that these angels came and took him. And he remembers getting to heaven. Again, the description is... It wasn't very intense or detailed, and this is a very long time ago. It's nearly 30 years ago now. But he described himself going to heaven. And when he arrived in heaven, he didn't see the Lord. He didn't see God, but he heard his voice. And he heard God say to him, I think his name was Robbie, and he heard the Lord's voice say, Robbie, didn't you ask for more time? And he said, yes, Lord, I did. And at that moment, the angels were given the command to take him back. He saw them, and he saw them bringing him back. And he then, at that point, I can't remember the paramedics must have been there. I think he'd already been taken to hospital. So we don't know what the time frame of all of this was, but this is what he experienced, that he died, and the reports from his wife and the doctors, he went into cardiac arrest, he did die. But they restarted his heart, and this is what he experienced from his side. So I was just sit there looking at this guy, and you can just see the life and the light shining through this man's eyes. That was the most profound part of all of this. I just remember the look in his eyes. You could just see the life, and you could see the Lord in this man's eyes. I mean, it was, because when we have the Lord in us, we have his life in us. So when you looked at the body and the outline, and then you looked at these eyes, it was like two different people. It was so weird. But anyway, we finished chatting, and I looked at my partner, and I said, wow. I said, sir, this is amazing. We've just brought a patient in. He's up there in bed number 2. And you have the answers to exactly what he was asking me in the back of the ambulance about whether or not there is life after death and what happens and all of this. And I said I couldn't answer him. But I did say to them that if he asked, God would provide and make a way. Something along those lines. And then I left the patient, and I walked up to our patient in bed number 2, and I said to him, sir, the answer to those questions that you asked me in the ambulance, they're down there in bed number 6. That man has a story to tell you. Make sure you connect with him. Make sure the two of you get together and talk, because he died and he went to heaven and he saw some stuff, and he will tell you his experience. So again, like just one of those stories that sticks in my mind even after all these years. You never know if what someone's saying is entirely true, but I've walked enough of a road with the Lord to believe what he said, and to believe what he saw, how he explained it. And I was just gobsmacked by, it's not, that's not coincidence. I'm sorry, that's just not coincidence. That is not coincidence. That is the Lord making a way and providing, and already knowing in advance, and just putting all the pieces together to actually connect with this man and to answer his life questions, his very important, very intense life questions. So, hey, a challenge to anybody who is listening out there, stop and think and ask yourself, hey, where am I? What is my life about? And where and how am I in relation to my walk with God? Do I even know God? Do I even believe in him? He always has a way. He always has a way. He always surprises us. So if you're asking and if you're seeking, don't give up. Keep trying, keep asking, because God will. If you are sincere, he will. He will meet you, and he will speak to you, and he will answer you. Cool. So I hope that was vaguely interesting, and I'll catch you on the next one.